Okay, we are streaming, and Corey, I'm going to pass it to you.
Well, to me, right?
I think I have the host now is all she was referencing.
Oh,
but yeah,
okay.
I think
I just passed the host to Corey.
looks good. It confirmed it. So yeah,
Okay,
we are ready.
perfect. I'll just stand by, but I'm hanging out in the background.
Go have a beer, Summer. Okay. I call to order this October 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Moab City Planning Commission at 6:02 p.m. Our first action item is a written determination pursuant to HB 5002, which I believe I need to read in the entirety again.
Yes.
Give me a second. All right. Pursuant to House Bill 5002 and Utah Code Annotated Sections 524207-4A and B, whereas pursuant to Moab Municipal Code 2.08015A, I am the presiding officer, the chair at all meetings of the Moab City Planning Commission. Whereas Utah Code Annotated Section 524101, the Open and Public Meetings Act, governs the conduct of meetings of the Moab City Planning Commission. Whereas the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act amendments provide that a public body may convene and conduct an electronic meeting without an anchor location if the chair of the public body, A, makes a written determination that conducting the meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location, and B, states that the written determination described in subsection 4A, the facts upon which this determination is based. Whereas in the previous written determination I made on August 25th, 2020, I stated the facts regarding COVID-19 and transmission, as well as Governor Herbert's statement regarding the continued need for heightened caution, and I incorporate that prior written determination here. Whereas the facts contained in the prior written determination remain true, including the facts that the state of Utah remains under a state of public health emergency. The City of Moab council meetings do require attendance by individuals at higher risk of severe illness from COVID-19, and the CDC guidelines indicate that lowest risk for events and gathering is virtual only. Whereas the health and safety of commission members, city officials and employees, staff and members of the public is best served by holding electronic meetings of the Planning Commission. Whereas the Planning Commission has prepared for and demonstrated the ability to effectively conduct its public meetings electronically, including providing members of the public means to observe the Planning Commission's meetings and provide comments electronically. Now, therefore, I conclude that conducting Moab City Planning Commission meetings with an anchor location that is physically accessible for members of the public to attend in person presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination will expire 30 days after the day upon which I made the determination. It is possible that circumstances could warrant future determinations, and so I may reissue future written determinations at that time. Signed, Chair.
And as a side note, City Hall is closing again to the public. We've had some sort of pop-up. It's like playing whack-a-mole with COVID. You know, we'll have positive tests pop up here and there. It's nothing major. Nobody's gotten really sick or anything, but just for at least 2 weeks, we're closing the office from the public, and everybody that can is working from home. Corey, though, is lucky enough to be able to stay in the office if he wishes. But anyway, we'll still be available the same way. Just a sort of a heads up.
So that brings me to a quick question before we proceed with the agenda. Corey, the recent plats, what's the best way to sign those these days with that in mind?
That is a good question. We haven't determined how we're going to be doing that interface yet. Joel had mentioned in the staff email that we got today that he was going to be defining that degree. But what we've been doing with like Chuck, city engineer, is we can do a drive-by where I'll come out to the front plaza and you can sign as you're heading on your way. So that works perfect for us.
I'm glad that means something very different than when I lived in a city.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Do we have any citizens to be heard this evening?
Summer? I don't know. If she's around.
Camera is away from the computer. I am not seeing any citizens to be heard.
Okay.
I'm also getting the connection notification from Zoom right now, so just beware if I disappear or freeze.
Okay.
If you become unstable.
I mean, that's always a risk. All right, so on to agenda item number 4, action item 4.1, consideration and possible recommendation of Moab City Resolution 39, 2020, a resolution approving the Sunflower Minor subdivision of property located at 8 Moab, Utah, 84532.
Alrighty. Yes. With this subdivision, I prepared a presentation if we would like to go through that. Just wanted to offer it because I know we have a heavier agenda item later. So it's yes. Okay, we'll bring it up. Make sure we're on the correct. Perfect. Okay. Is that showing up well for everybody?
Yeah.
Great. All right. And we are on 39, the Sunflower Minor subdivision, correct? Okay. All righty. So Sunflower Minor subdivision, location at 889 North Main Street, Moab, Utah. Property owner, JJ Wong organization, JJ Wong, applicant, parcel size at the 564 acres, and then dividing into 2 lots, one of those housing the existing commercial use and the other subdividing into that vacant lot area of 3 acres. The zoning for both parcels is a C4 general commercial zone. Showing now the vicinity map, you can see the existing Super 8 motel here in the north area of the parcel, and then that vacant section of parcel on that south end. This more westernly section is already a subdivided existing parcel. So what he's doing now is planning to subdivide between the vacant area and the hotel itself. This is the recorded county map, or excuse me, county plat, showing in the bottom left-hand corner that existing parcel. And then this is the proposed draft ordinance. I know this gets really small for folks. I'll zoom in here the best I can. Alrighty. So the only interesting quality about this subdivision is that access easement that would be required for the hotel entrance is coming onto that second lot 2, the south portion of the parcel. But other than that, both meet the parcel requirements for the C4 zone and no proposed development at this time. Alrighty. So with the narrative, as we had discussed, property owner is just wanting to subdivide with no particular development plans for the lot 2 of the subdivision, making lot 1 more eligible for potential sale into the future. And with the background, this is just explaining the submission process, the particular dates that it was submitted to the city, and then to our DRT review with comments supplied back to the applicant and then on to Planning Commission. So a fairly short presentation here. I can stop sharing screen and we can enter into discussion if you'd like, and then I can open it back up if you'd like to see the recommended motion.
Sounds really good. I have a question. Oh, I'm hearing some background. This is on our existing OA map, correct?
That is correct.
What happens to the subdivided off parcel as far as if it still has an existing OA overlay on it?
You want me to address that, Corey?
Sure.
So when we did the existing OA map, we just did the corner where the motel was and left the rest off of it.
You did.
So the balance of the parcel is not considered an existing OA.
So the lot 2 would not be an existing OA if
Correct. It would have to qualify whenever we come up with overnight accommodations development standards, which I hope is relatively soon. They would have to follow those rules when they're adopted.
That was my question. Thank you.
And if memory serves me correctly, it was the other subdivided parcel that was controversial in the past because it was zoned residential. Is that correct?
Oh, the one closer to Fifth West?
Yeah. Wasn't there some public meetings and some controversy surrounding that?
That was an annexation potential.
That-
And it was,
Oh.
From property owners. It's on the north side of Westwood Avenue.
yeah, it's just a strip that's 10 acres and it's not currently in the city. And they wanted to do a pre-annexation agreement. The city council declined to entertain that. So they have not decided whether or not they want to move forward with the petition at this. But yes, that parcel has been controversial. Should it be residential? Should it be commercial? It should be a mix. But this is a different piece that is square in the C4.
Thank you for that clarification.
Does anyone else have any questions for Corey or Nora before we entertain a motion?
So just to clarify, like if it does get split up right now, it's not available for like immediate development into some sort of like overnight accommodation. It's like once the actual standards get developed, then they can apply for it. Okay.
So there's no vested right that goes along with this sort of approved anything.
Right. I mean, once this is recorded, they could apply for any permitted use in the C4, and overnight accommodations are not currently permitted, but they could build something else if they wish.
Okay, so we could put forward a positive recommendation with or without modifications, continue the action item and give specific direction as to what information we need, or negatively recommend the minor subdivision. That is one of the documents in the agenda. It has a recommended motion if we'd like to approve it, if anyone is interested in making that.
Trying to find the document. Is it under the agenda
I think I
summary?
found it.
It's the agenda.
I move to forward a positive recommendation of Moab City Resolution 39-2020, a resolution approving the Sunflower Minor subdivision of property located at 889 North Main Street, Moab, Utah.
Would anyone like to second the motion? Okay,
I'll second.
Jesso seconds. Any discussion? All right, we will.
Quick question, like, are there pros or cons to doing this right now? It seems as though like right now, the main like impetus behind this like splitting is to make lot one more like, make it a little bit more appealing towards like selling or purchasing. And so like, does eventually like lot two have the possibility of becoming overnight accommodations once standards get identified and they can petition for that?
Mhm. Yeah, it's always, at least as our zones are written now, if we choose to leave overnight accommodations as a use by right in any way in C4, they would, if they meet the criteria that we've yet to establish when we reopen things. Correct. It doesn't seem like we're going down the county track where everything is going to be a legislative action with a new overnight accommodation, but that's always a possibility too. So Okay, so I have a motion and a second. I think we're ready to vote. Corey, are you handling that because of Summer's internet problems?
Yes, I could do a roll call.
Okay.
All right. Commissioner Luke,
Aye. Oh, yeah, sorry.
yeah, Commissioner Rubin,
Aye.
Commissioner Jessica,
Hi.
and Commissioner Kaya.
Aye.
The vote passes 4-0 and resolution is approved. Good job, everybody.
Okay. Next item is another action item, 5.1, consideration and possible recommendation of Moab City Resolution 40, 2020, a resolution approving the Jasmine minor subdivision of property located at 1089 North Main Street.
All righty, I will take the screens again. Is that showing up okay for everyone? Great. All righty, Jasmine minor subdivision, location at 1089 North Main Street, Moab, Utah. Property owner Wong Organization Ltd, applicant JJ Wong. Parcel size 40 acres. The subdivision would be lot 1 at 1.63 acres, and then tract A, this lot 2 is actually inaccurate. It should be tract A at 39.56 acres. Both zoning is still in the C4 general commercial zone, and proposed use is an existing commercial use on lot 1, with tract A being a vacant parcel. So as you'll see, this is just north of the lot subdivision that we just reviewed, being that larger parcel that borders the RC. Showing now is the recorded county plat, both with the Portal RV Resort just to the west, and then the gas station down on the very corner there. This is the proposed survey plat for the minor subdivision. We'll go in a little bit more here. You'll see the larger extension of that plat is tract A at 39.58 acres, with the small section that houses the Motel 6 hotel on that corner there. You'll also notice here that the minor subdivision runs meets and bounds on the south side of this utility and access easement. So this easement is a portion of the 40-acre lot, not a portion of the hotel subdivision itself. Where this parcel boundary would be located for the lot 1 is essentially at the edge of the development parcel for the hotel. So their concrete and circulation goes right to here, with probably some trees bordering that just within that parcel boundary.
So this is a lot like the other one, in that they're splitting off the already developed parcels so they could potentially sell the other one, which is not currently eligible for overnight accommodations, but could be if we allow them in the C4 zone.
Right. And this looks like, these are files that were taken from my laptop because I didn't have my VPN set up. So this looks like it is not, it's jumbled between the last lot with the Super 8 and the Motel 6. So it's showing the inaccurate. My presentation's backwards. It's not 889 North. We're at 1089 North. But like Nora just said, the narrative is essentially the same. Same property owner, same applicant, hoping to basically subdivide the existing commercial uses from the rest of the vacant land for potential sale and future development use. Again, very short presentation. I'll exit share screen and we can entertain any discussion. And I can certainly throw that survey back up if we do have questions.
Yeah, can you put the survey back up? Because I'm looking at it on my own screen too, and I'm actually having trouble. There's lot 1 and then tract A, and I'm having a little trouble figuring out where actually the subdivision line is.
Correct. Yeah, the tract A. Are you able to see the screen okay?
Yeah.
So the subdivision is a rectangular divide at this meet and bound area. So what we're seeing is this utility and access easement is on that northern tract A parcel. So that straight line and then running down to that polygon shape. And I can, maybe if I exit out, I can zoom into a Google Earth image that may be more clarifying, if that
So
would be helpful.
it's lot 1 being subdivided off from everything else. That's it.
That's correct. So tract A is a term that they're using as a land survey, is a large scope of land as opposed to a lot, where
lot,
this is
okay.
going to be a single lot. Right.
Okay, great. It was yeah, for some reason
So this access easement that's shown, while it's actually in tract A, it will continue to provide access to the existing hotel. So there will be an easement on that piece that provides the access to this hotel today, and it will continue to. So it'll be a shared access easement between the two parcels.
So is there a reason that you wouldn't draw the subdivision line to include that easement, since it is the main access to that hotel?
Yes, the reasoning the applicant gave for that designation was the future purpose of connecting lots into that tract. So as they subdivide further, in theory, they would all be using this continuation of that access easement. So even though it's the main service line for lot 1, they're going to keep it intact for the rest of the tract as they subdivide further.
It's just a little bit different way of, I mean, they could have done it either way. They could have put
Right.
the property line right down the middle, but this is the way they choose to do it, and that works. So
There is also, it's not shown on the parcel exactly, but there is also a access easement to the south end of the lot here, but in the Google Earth view, there's actually a connection, a back access where this lot runs through that gas station exit. Really is more circulation in practicality, but it's by legal definition has 2 accesses to the right of way.
And if you zoom out, Corey, can you see the conservation easement? Is that farther to the north on the other side of you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't know if there is a conservation easement included in this particular tract. There is one directly across the road. But along here, there is that stormwater, the north trunk line goes down a section of this property and then enters through the south into the neighboring property that is to the south of this one. So that's that easement that you're seeing, basically right where that access is located.
All right, I'm going to ask some hypothetical questions. With the standards that we're reviewing, I know we're looking at the RC. This is not the RC, but it's directly adjacent to the RC on a couple sides, right?
Right.
This is probably the biggest remaining vacant parcel we have within city limits at this point. Okay.
Pretty close, yeah.
I want to like ground us in where we are.
Right.
And I know there have lot size restrictions and requirements as that we've discussed with our new standards that potentially, if those same standards were applied to this zone eventually, would impact either the number of OAs you could do, the number of rooms. Essentially, I know we had discussed in the past, we didn't want to make it so someone could have a really large parcel, subdivide it out a bunch of times, and get far more new rooms that they wouldn't have otherwise per the parcel size. Does that make sense? And I'm curious how that plays into this potentially, if we're thinking like hypothetically down the road. Because there's an
By rooms,
there's an existing OA on this particular parcel. It would then be off by itself. And so now this parcel would have no rooms per acres.
Corey, you want to take it or do you want me to try it?
Go for it, Nora.
So what we've been talking about in the RC is a minimum lot size of 2 acres. So, and that's so that, you know, they can't be divided into little tiny pieces. They still could be divided into potentially 2-acre properties. And we talked about, there's this thing in Utah called the pending ordinance doctrine. And sometimes when an ordinance is pending, we can apply the upcoming standards if we've had public hearing on those standards, which is a potential for this project, except that that's just in the RC. We have not discussed it in the C4, so we cannot invoke that pending ordinance doctrine. So today, they have a right to this subdivision with just under 2 acres. And what we talked about with them is including the access, it's 2 acres, basically. If it were the access were to be on their side of the line, that little piece would be about 2 acres. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yes. Thank you. And I understand that it directly applied. I'm just trying to, this is a big hypothetical, and I know we've used this parcel as a sort of an exercise in potential applications in the past. So the size of the parcel of tract A is 2 acres with that easement access on that. What is, I can't hear you.
Technically, what is it, Corey, 1.65 for the parcel itself?
Correct.
If you were to include that easement, I don't know the exact square footage, but it would be pretty close.
Sorry, that
Right.
cut out terribly. I didn't hear any of the figures in that.
Okay, so I think the lot size is 1.65-ish. And I don't know the exact number, but if you were to include that extra 20 feet, it's likely that it would be approaching 2 acres. I haven't run the numbers, but.
So
And we
the
can't
lot,
require it because we haven't been talking about it in this zone yet. So we can't require the 2 acre minimums because it's not in our, on the books anywhere.
hearing Nora.
Kaya, I think it might be I'm hearing Nora, you're okay on our end. It might be the connection for Kaya.
So Nora, you're talking about the existing hotel is slightly under 2 acres?
The parcel 1 that they want to break off with the existing hotel is just under 2 acres in size. But if you were to add in the 20-foot access, the total would be just about 2 acres.
And that's fine. I was curious about the larger piece. The existing, I'm not trying to apply anything to the existing. I was contemplating potentially how many times parcel A could be subdivided and how many potential future overnight accommodations could go on parcel A if subdivided.
Subdivide a plot besides the 2 acres, possibly.
Yeah, we kind of haven't gotten to the C4 zone yet, so we could add some different restrictions in terms of lot size and percentage of the area that can be developed as an overnight accommodation. So we'll sort of cross that bridge when we come to it. We have in the past talked to the developer and their team about the potential, what if we were to pass these regulations? And we talked about, like having a little retail plaza with some little office and retail and a hotel. And the applicant at that point in time said, yeah, that sounds like, he didn't object to that concept at all. So I think that they're thinking something as kind of more of a master plan for that whole piece. And that's why they wanted the road extended so that it could be kind of the interior road that feeds both those properties and whatever else they decide to put on it. I can't guarantee that they won't come back in and want to divide it again. But we don't have anything on the books today that says they can't.
Oh, for sure. I just like to, I like to conceptualize and so that it's at least in people's minds about here's feasibly what we could be looking at in the future when we're making these decisions, not in a bubble. Okay, that's my questions.
Is this the lot that had the historic site that you were saying the other day? Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, it was I believe it's called the Elk Ranch, and it's a little cabin as a historic site, which would be directly west of this subdivision area.
West.
Like in the trees there?
It's hidden in the trees. It's overgrown. I don't think you can really see it unless you're on the property, deep into that little drainage area.
But it would be in tract A. Corey,
Tract A, not a part of this. Correct, tract A.
you have to address it at that time. But thank you for reminding me about the historic preservation when it comes to something later in our meeting.
I had another question, I guess not directly related to this one, but how is the name of the subdivision decided? Is that just whoever the applicant is, like Jasmine and Sunflower?
Yep, property owner or applicant can decide at the time of the application, which is nice when they name it like this as opposed to all of our street addresses that get a little.
Yeah, and they need to make sure that the county recorder will make sure that it's not already taken by someone else in the county. And so if by chance it is, they'll have to change it at final plat when they record the plat.
Like, okay, that was just.
Yeah.
Any other questions for staff about this potential on the table here? Okay.
Speaking hypotheticals, just for this, the fact that it's C4, what would need to happen for that to be zoned RC if they were to apply? Is there a big process besides just community input, or?
It's a rezone request. So a rezone is basically pretty totally discretionary on the part of the city council. So the applicant, there are two ways you can go about rezoning a property. One is the city could initiate a rezone of a large area. Like we decide that we want to expand the C5 area by Mills, that the city wants to initiate that to include a number of properties. We could do that. Or the property owner themselves could apply for a zone change to apply a different zoning to that parcel. What happens then is it comes to the planning commission after we review it at staff level. It would go to the planning commission, and the planning commission would would hold a public hearing and make a recommendation to city council. And then the city council would have to act upon it. They don't have to say yes, they can say no, and that's fine because it's discretionary.
Okay, pretty simple then.
Yeah. Well, it takes a while usually, but yes, concept.
All right. If that's the end of the discussion, back to a potential motion. If someone wants to make it, just like the others, it's in the agenda summary for this agenda item.
I move to recommend Moab City Resolution 40/2020, a resolution approving the Jasmine Minor subdivision of property located at 1089 North Main Street, Moab, Utah, 84532.
All right, got a motion. Anyone second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right.
Okay, we'll call for a roll call vote. Commissioner Wojciechowski? Is that close?
Wojciechowski.
Wojciechowski?
Yeah. Aye.
Commissioner Villalobos?
Sure. Yes.
Is that close?
Yeah.
All right. Commissioner O'Leary
Hey, got it. Aye.
and Commissioner Merrifield.
Aye. You're a brave man, Corey.
Well, I had the screen short where I couldn't do it before, so now I opened up the screens. I can see everyone's name. I thought I'd give it a shot. All right, motion passes and resolution 40, 2020 approved.
Okay. Progressively worse, so I apologize. Okay. We next have a discussion item, 6 point long-term planning priorities.
Okay, let me just talk about this a little bit and then I'll start showing you stuff. So this really came from the mayor. And the mayor has requested that the Planning Commission and City Council, I want this to provide light but not shine in my face, provide council with, they want to have a joint Planning Commission City Council work session on planning priorities. And I welcome this because, you know, everybody has their pet projects and the council does, the planning commissioners do. And it's hard when we hear sort of comments about somebody's pet project. And when we hear comments about somebody's pet project, it doesn't necessarily mean that the whole council or the whole planning commission thinks it's a great idea. It means that one person might think it's a great idea. So generally, we take direction. The way our government works, we have a city manager form of government, which means that we basically work for Joel. And so we follow his direction. And the city council can also direct us to do tasks through Joel. But in order for there to be clear direction, a quorum of the council really should take a vote and make sure that that there are other people involved. And this is really just so we can figure out what we're supposed to work on and what we're not. And there were a couple of sort of hot items for some individual council members that they felt like aren't getting done. And so I welcome this so that they can, then you guys and the city council can talk to us about what our priorities are, big picture, and can include discussion from both groups and all of the individuals so that we can figure out what our priorities are for all these projects. So I prepared a bunch of background information, some of which I sent out this ginormous spreadsheet thing this afternoon, and I don't expect that you will have read it completely, and that doesn't really matter. But what I wanted to do with that is just give you some background information. I'm going to share my screen to a PowerPoint that I prepared, if that's okay.
Is that list that you sent, is it in any particular order or was it just kind of random order?
I can talk about that.
Okay.
So let me see, slideshow from beginning. Okay, so what I did in that spreadsheet is that that spreadsheet has 5 different sheets on it. It's a Google page, a Google sheet doc. So it's like an Excel. It's just on the Google platform. And so what I did was I tried to provide enough background information so that the Planning Commission kind of has an idea of the kinds of things we're working on a daily basis, some things that we have been working on actively, the existing applications that we kind of have on our plate or have been working on this year. talk about ordinances where we've discussed them, but they haven't finished the process yet, like the overnight accommodations. And then a sheet that kind of lists planning priorities, and it's really from that sheet that we will get a little bit more detail from you guys tonight about what projects to consider and what not to. So I'm going to go over those Google Sheets and we're going to talk about it. Then I also created a ranking sheet, which will be homework for you. But what that ranking sheet does is it basically takes the information on sheet 5 of those Google Sheets and puts it in broad categories like overnight accommodations, housing, miscellaneous code amendments, public information. So I've kind of tried to break it down into broad categories and then certain tasks within that. And so when we get to that rating sheet, what we'll want to do is have the Planning Commission recommend additions to that. So something you might want to consider that we do as a part of this process. So we're going to go over that, and then I'm going to ask the Planning Commission to pick their top five priorities each off of that list once we add to it if we want to. And then we're going to talk, then just that will be something that we'll provide to the City Council. Now, the work session is next Tuesday, and I realize that it's sort of short notice. It was for me too. And it's scheduled from 6 to 7 p.m. So it won't be terminally long. And it's Zoom, so you can take it wherever you want. And I will follow up the Planning Commissioners who are not here about that. And then between now and over the next few days, I want you to take a look at doing some rankings on the ranking sheet, and we'll get to that when we get to it. Okay, so what I wanted to start with is at the beginning of every year, and especially election years, the City Council, I'm trying to figure out how to make this bigger, maybe. No, that's not gonna work. Uh-oh. Sorry. Okay. At the beginning of the year, the council does an all-day workshop retreat, and they come up with their strategic plan for 2020. And all the departments go in and we tell them what we've been working on and how we met our 2019 goals, and then what we propose for 2020. And what is on the screen now is sort of a distillation of that after the City Council discussed it. So we may have put some other things on here, but this is in fact what's in the strategic plan. So the department goals for 2020 were complete master planning for Walnut Lane, and that's with help of lots of other departments. And that's going to take a long time. Review and amend the PAD ordinance, or our planned affordable housing new zone and new procedure. It's an overlay and it's a procedure really. And right now it's available in the R3 and R4 zones, maybe R5, I don't know, I'd have to look it up, but nobody has applied for it. And it's been adopted for about 1.5 years. And so obviously we need to relook at and figure out what's going on with it and why nobody's using it. We know one of the issues is parking, but it will take a process. So that's one of the items that the council recommended that we look at this year. Developing standards to allow for new overnight accommodations. We're in the process for our C zone, and then we need to get to the other ones. C4 will come real quickly, and then we need to look at C1, C2, and C3, which are kind of our downtown zones. And then there's some budgetary priorities, not that we have any money for anything, so ignore all those. This is pre-COVID. And then general goals for the longer term, 3 to 5 years, is to overhaul the development code, including the subdivision regulations. That's the highest priority in my mind. And there are a number of, what we'd like to do, there are a number of codes out there that many communities that are our size and resort communities and those kinds of things, they've created this unified code that, and there are a couple consultants out there in the world that do this, that make things consistent and pretty easy to read and follow in a certain order. And so if we had all the money in the world, we would really like to overhaul the development code. And it just needs it. So that's one of them. And then subdivision regulations, I've actually split out as a separate one on the next pages, become more efficient and responsive to the public. And that has to do with providing good public information, both in written form and in verbal form. Build on existing program to encourage workforce housing. The city council, again, about a year and a half ago, adopted a shared workforce housing ordinance, which requires that new employee housing be built with new overnight accommodations. And that has been in place. And we do have a fund, and that money's going to go toward Walnut Lane, along with a bunch of other money that we don't know where we're going to get yet. But so we want to continue to encourage workforce housing, and the Moab Area Housing Task Force is working on kind of updating their overall plan strategy. And so it's with them and with lots of other partners. Build on existing programs to promote sustainability and greenhouse gas reduction. At this point in time, we still had a sustainability director when this was presented. We don't anymore. And so there was a sustainability plan that came before council quite a number of times. It was never adopted. So I think the council actually wants to get that thing adopted and then move forward with some additional sustainability initiatives. Get Walnut Lane done. Obviously, that's a big priority for all of us. And then proceed with the next affordable housing project. Figure out how the city is going to play a role if we can do another one. So those were the 3 to 5 years. So that came from the strategic plan, which is, it's just that, you know, and we know things are going to change. COVID sort of threw a wrench in everybody's works, as you know, but this is sort of a basis from which we move forward and accomplish our goals. So I'll show the Google Sheets in a minute. But the sheet one is we always get questions that need follow-up, and we talk about it, and we do Zoom meetings with people. And so sheet one is just kind of all the stuff that we've been working on like this week. So this is just kind of a typical week of the kinds of questions that we have. And these are things that we need to follow up on. And it usually involves coordinating with other people. So that's just an example of the kinds of things we do every day. Sheet two is a list of the active and recent planning applications that have been filed for this year. And many of them have been done, but some of them have not yet been completed. So those are official applications that we have received. Sheet three is then, you know, every time we do something and we look at the code and say, gosh, I wish it would be more clear than that. Corey has been taking copious notes. And so sheet three is the planning related code amendments that we think we need just based on ongoing usage and noticing things that are out of whack with the code. So that's what's on sheet three. This is all background information for you in this bigger discussion. And then sheet four are the ordinance amendments that are in the works, and there aren't very many of those, so that's a pretty brief one, but those are things that we've already been working on, ordinance amendments, and for whatever reason, they're not done yet. And then sheet five is the list of potential planning priorities and projects, some of which comes from the above things, some of which comes from the strategic plan, and we can certainly add to that list. And then I'm going to show the ranking sheet, which I prepared, and it's basically the same information that's on sheet five. It's just organized differently. So this by broad stroke. Tonight, I'd like to hear from that list what things you should add, because this will result in our sort of priorities. So what you would like to add, and then tonight, what I'd like you to do is individually tell me which 5 you like the best or think is the most important. Each planning commission, and then we can talk about it together for everybody. So does everybody kind of understand the deal? And then I'll send the ranking sheet, I will send to you directly. And between now and Monday, it would be awesome if you could, there are 2 columns that we'll see, and one is to rank of importance, 1 through 3, 1 being most. And then the second one is what kind of time frame you think makes the most sense to you for that task. So with that, I'm going to escape this and go to okay, that's the broad one. Where's the other one? Well, I don't know where it went. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute while I find this file, and then I'll open it up again. Okay, so I need to go to.
COVID.
I know.
Oof. Everyone wear your masks. Stay home. It's getting real bad.
I know. Google Docs is
Neither.
and not very user friendly for me, so it sometimes takes me a while.
So this is really helpful to see how the process works from the staff perspective on things, you know, that are sort of in the back of your mind. They're going to come up again. Someone mentioned
Right.
under review code things. It's nice to see. I don't know. My brain appreciates this kind of presentation.
All right, come on. Site plan revisions.
Did you say that there was a joint meeting next Tuesday?
There is at 6 p.m.
All right. Were emails sent out about that?
No, not yet. No. I mean, it was just really set that we were going to do that. So this is your warning, and I will, and the agenda will show that it's a joint meeting, and I'll send out information on everything else. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again because I found the document. Is it showing? Do you see the spreadsheet? Okay, cool. So these are just, you don't need to read these, but they're just the kinds of things that we deal with kind of on a daily basis. Some things that are kind of in the works. We have a rezone request. We had inquiries about a B&B turning into a school, lot consolidation, typical, this well-being survey that we've been working on, pre-application meetings, again, the subdivisions, project. We're looking at another project. It used to be the Tumac subdivision. Now it's turning into something else. We expect an application on that. Actually, I think we've gotten a pre-application on that. Slick Rock, Portal RV, and Moab Valley RVs are all in the midst of updating their site plans and moving some sites around. No net increase in sites. They're just trying to make, just hit the market that they need. Annexations, we get inquiries almost every week about potential annexations. There's some building permits out there that always need a little extra help. and coordination. So this is just one example. We have there will be a site plan amendment for Sleep in Mainstay. They just want to make it prettier. So these are just kind of the things that we talk about. Lionsback is ongoing. EMS, you'll see soon the new EMS building. So this is just the kind of thing that we see and talk about at our staff meetings every week. And are generally with all of these, we're consulting with other departments and or outdoor folks. So that's what's on that sheet. These are our active applications. If I can get it to, okay. So these are all the applications that we have seen since the beginning of the year. Some of them are done, most of them are done, but we still, for example, EMS filed a pre-application. Now they have a full on application, but it hasn't been done yet. Spitfire Barbecue is almost done, but there's still some details about a parking agreement. So these are just some things that we need to follow up on. Jim on 5th did a revised site plan, but there's some enforcement issues. So that's why that's not completely done. And then the campgrounds, these 2 minor subdivisions we just talked about. There's some folks who want to build a 5-unit townhome project that had filed an application for that. This is the McElhaney that we talked about before a little bit. They filed a pre-application for that. So this is just what we've got going, and it's mostly the last, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that we're working on, and then just trying to do some finishing touches on some of the other ones. And then I think we received another application today, but I wouldn't swear to it. But there are another couple that we expect to come in relatively soon. So those are the applications. We have a responsibility to process those. They have to be kind of our priority because they are applications from the public, and part of our charge is to be as responsive as possible to the public. Some of these go to the Planning Commission, some of them don't. We just deal with at a staff level. Many of these you will probably see. So those are the applications that we have under review. Here is the running list. Come on, you can do it. Of code amendments. So this is, every time something comes up, and you can see it goes back to January, something comes up, we write it down, we write it down, we write it down. So it's kind of a long list, and there's some things I actually took off that had to do with things that were not land use code related, and there are quite a number of those, but definitions, modifications in the way some of the procedures are described, sign code. Right now they're in 2 separate chapters of the code, so it's really silly. So we need to do that. Breweries in the C3 is something that one of the city council members is consistently interested in. And we now have a business on Main Street that wants to turn into a brew pub, which is fine. We just need to change the code to allow that in that zone. So that'll be a city initiated. And then right now our code doesn't address temporary structures and uses really well at all. So we need to revamp that section. So that's what that is. These are the ordinances that, or the code amendments that we're already working on, including RC and C4 zones for overnight accommodations, assured workforce housing amendment. I don't know if you remember, but a while back we came to you with a request for a code amendment to allow smaller employee housing units if they build them on site concurrent with construction. And the Planning Commission made a recommendation and held a public hearing. The City Council reviewed it and wanted more information. And so due to COVID and everything else, that has kind of been on the back burner, but we need to get back to it at some point. And then, this is a new one. So this is a brand new thing, but ATV changes, the county and city councils yesterday adopted a joint or they each adopted a resolution on some regulations for ATVs, and we're involved because it includes changing our code to not allow new ATV businesses basically within the city or county. So we have to do our part. So that has now been added to the list of things that we have been directed to do and are currently working on. So so what this sheet is kind of a distillation of some of the information that we've talked about into what we really need to do. You know, what are some things that we're actively working on and we know we need to do. So subdivision ordinance rewrite, as I mentioned, our subdivision ordinance is really in need of major revision. The nodes planning, I'll explain this to you. When we were doing the overnight accommodations, the initial drafts, and we were working with Landmark Design, the city also entered into a contract with them to do some planning for commercial nodes. In other words, there were some areas in the city that kind of made sense as commercial nodes that primarily cater to the residents. And so Landmark did some sort of inventory and gave us some information on land use and some recommendations about possibilities. And so the question, and they include the C5 area near Milt's and Dave's Market. 500 West, there's a little node of commercial uses in there. West Center Street, which is kind of a mishmash of stuff. And that one's going to be, that one more work has been done on, but it's really complicated because there are lots of players involved with lots of differing opinions, but at some point we should probably deal with it. And so what we need to know is what's the priority? You know, is that something that we should get to right away? Is that something that can come later? Assured workforce housing ordinance cleanup. This could be fairly complicated, but is really necessary. New unified code, I talked about the major big overhaul. That's what that represents. The PAD ordinance, I talked about that already. Modifications to our planned affordable development codes to make it more usable for people. That's going to take a fair amount of work. Sustainability efforts. This is kind of a tricky one because we were not really involved in the sustainability plan. So if we were to take that over, we would have to, and we may be asked to by the council, we would have to try to get the sustainability plan in shape so the council can actually adopt it and therefore establish some priorities for us to work on. But I don't know what those are yet. So I just clumped it in a category. Moab transportation plan. Right now, we're doing a planning effort with UDOT and Grand and San Juan County to come up with a regional transportation plan, which is required if we want to receive any federal funding for road improvements through UDOT. And so we're working on that. It's kind of a regional thing. But there will be some specific Moab related recommendations that come out of that. And so we will need to follow up on those. And that probably would take, I don't know, code changes. I am not sure at this point. Adopt the downtown master plan. This kind of has two parts. We have a master plan that was developed for the downtown core Main Street out master plan. And it was reviewed by the Planning Commission and forwarded to the City Council for action, but they never approved it. And I have reviewed that master plan and it doesn't comply with any of UDOT's standards. So it's going to take some major revision in order for it to be realistic. And then also, depending on where we decide to go with hotspot, which is getting much, much closer. So how to use for this pot of money that UDOT is offering to help us deal with congestion issues. So the downtown master plan would include those things. Housing update and continued efforts. Again, this is with other partners, and it has to do with the update of the housing plan and additional housing initiatives that we want to move forward on. Dark sky compliance, which is probably under sustainability, but specifically, we have an adopted dark sky plan, which says within 5 years, all commercial and residential folks have to comply with that plan. And so we need to kind of get the word out. We did some of this initially about a year ago, 6 months ago, but then COVID came in and all of our public information stuff kind of got put off, but it's something that we need to follow up on. And again, that's with the county and with the dark sky. There's a dark sky committee who specifically has an interest in that. Revised application forms and information sheets. We constantly hear that people perceive the development process as being really complicated. And so right now we have sheets for each of our procedures with the application forms, and then a sheet that talks about the processing and what the processing looks like. I think we need to kind of dumb those down a little and not just quote sections of the code, but actually kind of walk them through the process. And also potentially include some general flow charts so people understand the processes and how they work. And that is, that's also something that we consistently move forward on. We've actually done some of that. Laura, our building, what's her official name? Anyway, she
Permit
helped.
technician. Yeah.
Building technician. She's been helping us with that. She's taking a furlough right now, so that nothing on that's getting done, but we need to do it. Specifically, we've had a request from a city council person saying that they want that done as soon as possible for ADUs. And then Walnut Lane is just this big, huge thing that we have to move forward on, whether we want to or not. So that's some background information, and you all now have that so that you can refer to it, and now you have some context. So I'm going to stop sharing again, and then I'm going to go to another document.
Back, I just realized it's now dark and my chickens have not been locked up, so I'll be.
Okay, that's fine. We can take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, can we do that? Is that allowed according to our meeting rules?
Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
otherwise they're going to get murdered by raccoons. So
5-minute break. Anybody needs to do anything. Share this. Can you guys see that? The Excel sheet?
Yeah, looks good.
What are we looking at now? Is this the ranking?
This is the sort of reorganized priority list. So what I've done here is kind of just reformatted all the stuff on sheet 5 into broad categories. For example, overnight accommodations. We need to finish the development standards for the RC and C4 zone. They're going to be quite similar. And then develop standards for the C1, C2, and C3. So I've just reorganized everything into broader categories. That's the way the mayor wanted to handle it with the city council. So, and then there's some specific, these are like specific tasks underneath these broad headings.
Looks
So what I want to do next is to go over this And then your homework will be, I'll send all this to you after the meeting, is to, for you individually, rank whether each of these is a level 1, 2, or 3 of importance, with one being the lowest, one being the highest, I'm sorry, and 3 being the lowest priority. And then what kind of time frame you think it makes sense for all of these things. And this would be for the tasks, for each of the tasks. And then there are lots of empty spaces here so that as we go through these, we can add things. We can add different items if we want to include other things that you guys come up with that's not already covered by the list. So other things you guys might want to work on.
Like stained glass.
Well, that's right. But that's pretty specific, I think, to the overnight accommodation. So that's kind of wrapped up in that one.
All right. If everyone's back, thank you for that break. I'm forgetting how quickly it gets dark.
You know, really fast.
Yeah. Anyways, if everyone's back, we can go ahead and continue just in the interest of being respectful of everybody's time.
Okay. So what's up on the screen now is sort of a reformatted and slightly expanded list of potential planning priorities that are up for discussion. And I've kind of drawn from the other lists to get this list. And I have organized them, as I was explaining, by some broad categories. That's the way the mayor wanted to do it for the joint work session with the city council. Makes some sense. So I have some broad categories, and then each of these would be a task. And so for housing, we need to finish what we're doing right now and do this C4, and then do the other commercial zones to allow or not allow overnight accommodations with certain development standards. Housing, there are a number of tasks that we've been talking about relative to the housing plan. Again, we have partners with this, but what I want to know is which one of these things is the most important to you all. And if there are other things that we need to add, we can do that. Code revisions, we talked about this kind of extensively. Rewrite is the big enchilada, the whole enchilada. New subdivision ordinance is also a pretty big chunk of time. This is pretty minor, but it seems to be one that warrants some special attention. The breweries. Omnibus changes is what I'm calling kind of that cleanup list that Corey's been putting together. And then consider amending the code to allow seasonal outdoor dining in commercial zones. We have approved emergency parklets due to COVID. And so over the winter, we're going to discuss whether that's something that we want to make part of our land use code and allow it seasonally. So that's something that we'll need to have a discussion on. And then I'm going to add another one, and that is modify zones. That came from yesterday's resolution. And that is that in the resolution, it directs the staff to look at our land use code and consider not allowing any new ATV or ATV operations in the city or county. So that's now on our list. Area planning and development. This is where I talk about revising the downtown plan to include the hotspot funding, the community nodes planning, and then the transportation and streets plan, which would also include sidewalk plan. Sidewalk plan and policy. the council has asked for an inventory of all our sidewalks and wants to work toward developing a policy on when we require sidewalks and when we don't. And when we don't, do we require them to pay into a fund? So that's something that has been mentioned that we need to work on. Sustainability, this is just the dark sky stuff. And then adopting the sustainability plan. And then public information, this is where I talk about revising the application information sheets. And I added it a separate task, develop an easy to understand packet on ADUs. So what I would like to do today is to talk about what other things, whether they fall in any of these categories or not, we could add a miscellaneous category or additional planning commission suggestions about specific tasks to add to this list. And then I'm going to send this list to both the planning commission and city council and ask them to do some rankings. So level of importance, just for the tasks, not necessarily for the broad categories. I want to know if this is your homework. If you think this is the most important as a level 1 or level 2 or level 3 being less important, not that it's not important, but, and then what time frame you think it needs to be done in. But today, what I'd like to do is add other things that you guys might have thought of that you'd like us to work on and like to the city council to direct us to work on, because that's really where it all comes from. So I want to add items as you think of them, and then I want you each to give me kind of your top 5, just so I have a sense of where your thinking is. Okay? So tell me what I need to add to this list.
I think under the ATV, UTV, I think the broader catch-all term is OHV, because ATV are smaller vehicles, where I think the intent of the city and county decision was to limit OHVs.
Yeah, but there's a definition in the resolution. And so that's the definition we would follow. And it basically covers 4x4s, the side-by-sides and the razors and things that aren't normally street legal. But the state has now made them street legal by their actions. So, and a little background on the resolution that was passed. It recommends this. It also says no more business licenses for ATVs or UTVs as it's defined at this time. So it also impacts business licenses. Then the third thing that it does is it limits the speed limit for these vehicles to 15 miles per hour in town. So those are the things, the initiatives that the city council and county council are looking at putting in place immediately. And we're working with the police and everything to try to give, and this was done kind of in the span of a week where they put all this stuff together. And it will probably change, but those are kind of the first 3 things that the council, county and city council have agreed to move forward with. Doesn't mean other things won't come along related to UTVs, but.
Nora, do we have access to this sheet here?
I can send it to you.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to try to process with someone else's screen, I have to say.
Okay. So slow. As soon as it loads, I'll share it to you through Google Docs. So you'll get an email. Or maybe you'll get the Excel sheet. I don't know what it's going to give you, but. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong file. I'm going to stop sharing so I can figure this out.
Yeah, I think certainly one of my high priorities is sort of updating our existing code to reflect more what is in those zones and what we want to see in those zones, and sort of reconfigure things like we've talked about. I know, we have, allowed uses in certain C zones, for example, that maybe aren't what we want in that C zone in the future, but they fit much better in another area, or we want to expand out what C2 means, for example. I know we've talked about that at length, and those seem like, when we're talking about community nodes, that's a big part of that too. I'm curious if the best use of everyone's time right now is for us to sort of look at this list that we hadn't looked at before and try to just come up with things, or if this would be best saved in by everyone email, and that could involve the commissioners that aren't present today too.
Okay. I just sent it all to you. So hopefully you'll get it.
Oh, great. I will look right now.
My computer is really slow today. I don't know why.
Just got it.
Okay.
Definitely.
I got it too, but and it doesn't have to be right this minute, but can you resend it as a Google Doc instead of a Excel, just because my computer doesn't like
Excel.
Microsoft.
I was able to open it on Docs.
There's an option at the top that says open as Google Sheet, maybe.
Yes. Thinking about opening. Okay, there.
All right. So
where and how would you like us to rank priorities, Nora?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, where and how would you like us to rank priorities?
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to do is add things that you guys want added to the list. So you just mentioned reviewing uses, zones. Reviewing permitted uses in city zones. Does that do it?
Yeah, I think that covers it. I know we have zones that we really don't have anywhere, and we have zones that were sort of created to fit a new thing. It'd be nice to just sort of clean it up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's really a priority for me is the idea of transportation, both for locals and for visitors. And so it kind of falls under line 29. And I was happy to see that it got brought up in the hotspot meetings that happened last week. So I don't know if we want any little more detail on that line, or just to make a note that, that's something I definitely see as a priority.
Okay. I think this one, this develop Moab specific transportation and streets plan, hopefully that expresses that. And the hotspot thing is kind of a whole separate deal. And we can talk about that at the next meeting. I can give you an update, but basically the projects that I think we're going to ask for are temporary shuttle, a short-term, some seed money for a shuttle and develop kind of a little transit plan. So we're good. We're asking for money for that. The reconfiguration of parking on our side streets. So we can't reconfigure parking on Main Street because it's a state highway, but we are talking about doing median parking on some of the side streets, kind of like in front of City Hall. So that would allow some additional parking that's close to Main Street. Then that is described as dispersed parking, which is a result of the not doing the parking garage. And that includes Emma Avenue parking lot, which we've been talking about doing for a number of years. And then the third thing is a multi-use trail from Moab out into the Spanish Valley. And we were talking about 2 different phases, but hopefully eventually it would go all the way to Spanish Trails Arena. So those are the hotspot things. So those things we're asking for money for anyway. And then Moab specific transportation plan. The regional plan we're talking about, we also talked about that one of the recommendations is transit and bicycle. And so they all kind of fit together that hopefully we can create a Moab specific plan. So that includes talking about shuttles and transit.
I've had numerous people also wonder about paid parking.
Yeah, I talked to the mayor about that yesterday. Not really a planning function. It's really, it's really a business function. So I could add it, I could certainly add it to the list.
You're gonna have to resend this to us, right? Like after you.
Yeah, I'll resend it when it's done. And I'll send it in Google Docs so everybody can well, no, I won't. I'll send it to you each separately because I want you each to rank them separately.
Great.
But yeah, I can add that. Like I said, it's not really a planning function. The city council would have to authorize that and would have to get permission from the state to do limited 2-hour parking or whatever. And then if we wanted to charge for parking, then they'd have to go into the whole process of finding a vendor and making that work. I can tell you, and I told this to the mayor yesterday, I've been through this in 2 different downtowns, and it's really controversial. People are really weird about parking, no matter what. And many of the business owners in the 2 places that I worked in didn't like it because they felt like it was in Park City, then the employees couldn't park in front of their business, which is part of the whole point, because we had a lot of that, and we do here too. And then the other thing is just the enforcement of it. And we're already stretching the police way too thin with the enforcement of a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit for UTVs. So enforcement is a big issue that the council will have to make a decision on and put some money into, whether or not we require it to be paid. So while it's not directly a planning decision, it relates to other things. It's a scarce resource, so it makes sense to limit it. But most people then argue if it's paid, then we usually what happens is we get a ton of complaints about the system itself and getting the bugs worked out. And that can take months and months and months. So it's even for a small town, it's not a little thing we can do, unfortunately, but it's something that we can talk about. Other ideas?
How specific are this general ideas, right?
Yeah, those are
Or specific tasks.
When I guess an overnight accommodation, I'm not, whatever has to do it, whenever something is required to have a civil space and that civil space includes art, how is that decided? Like what the art is there any process in that? Like if it's local or not?
Well, we have a couple art programs already, like the Art Walks program. So we could put it under overnight accommodations. We could put,
I was just wondering if money goes into like a pool and then somebody else decides, or we decide how that gets divvied.
generally it happens through, I'm not even sure who it happens through.
The city has a program where business owners can request artists to
Right.
on their property, which has happened last year. That's like the big murals you see on the, the car wash and on the back of the Moab garage, things like that. That's been through that program.
And that's really kind of administered by the MARC folks. But, we can certainly talk more about including it in the overnight accommodation stuff, both in town and the stuff, that we've been looking at more recently.
You mentioned signs somewhere in one of these sheets. Did it end up on this?
It's sorted in the omnibus changes, but if you want us to add it as a separate item, I was thinking that might not be a bad idea anyway.
Yeah, I think clarifying some of the sign codes around town could be helpful for businesses.
Yeah, I think there's a heck of a lot of style campaigns. I think that I've seen, the consummate confusion over dark skies and what that means. Of course, anytime a street light is out, everyone is like, oh, it's the dark skies.
And it's not. If I can just clarify that.
Of course, we know this, but everyone doesn't.
Our street lights are actually Rocky Mountain Power. They're responsible for them, except for Main Street and some decorative ones that we've put on, I think, Center. All the others are maintained by Rocky Mountain Power, and we've been working with Rocky Mountain Power on a sustainability plan to change out those fixtures on sort of a long-term schedule so that they become more energy efficient and meet the dark sky ordinance better.
Has there ever been any discussion of moving some of the utility lines underground as roads and stuff get redeveloped and repaved to, improve our view shed?
Right now, we don't have a requirement, and that's mostly because of cost. The utility companies generally don't like them because it's harder for them to dig. They'd have to dig stuff up rather than just dealing with a line or whatever. So they hate them, so they won't help pay for them. So what tends to happen is that either the community or individual projects have to pay for them. And it's a condition that we could put in, for example, overnight accommodations, or put in certain zones that new development, as much as possible, can have underground utilities. But it hasn't really been a priority for Moab as yet, and we have no money. We have no money right now, but it's good to put on. I think it's great to mention that.
So maybe this is naive, but I hear people from the city all the time saying, oh, we have no money, we have no money. But then I hear reports that like sales revenues were back up over 100% for July.
Right.
And so did it dip down and is it coming back up, or are we really just out of money?
Both. We came into this fiscal year before COVID with a $2 million overrun. So we already cut, even before COVID, we already cut our budget by a couple $1 million. So that was going into 2020. And then COVID came. And so we have some of our highest, the spring, you know, May, June, and part of July, our numbers were really down. So we have a lot of catching up to do. But we're already, even without COVID, we were in kind of budget trouble.
Not the most recent joint meeting, but the city council meeting prior, our financial director or financial officer Clint gave a really good presentation on the updates of that. So he gives the sales tax revenue and then histories of years prior and then estimates going forward. So it is a pretty good snapshot of what that question is.
And some of the money is might be starting to loosen up a little bit. It's up to the council. We laid off 20% of our employees. So that's one of the things that they will look at if we want to bring people back or not. And then, you know, there's a really long list of things that need money. And it's going to take us a while to dig ourselves out. But we're thrilled that we're getting sales tax now, but along with that, we get the noise and the aggravations. Trade-offs.
Doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be.
Be better balanced. I am having my connection is becoming worse by the minute. I don't know if anyone else is struggling right now, but I'm hearing about, I would say 75% of what everyone's saying at this point. I apologize, but I will maybe say if we could continue this conversation or get those instructions via email to do the ranking, and if anything else comes up that folks want to add to this list, maybe just send it in an email to everyone if you think of it.
I will do that.
Is that okay, Nora?
That's fine. And then you guys don't need to worry about the top 5 or all that kind of stuff. I would just ask you to, over the next few days and over the weekend, to do ranking and also add anything that you think hasn't been addressed somewhere else. Or if it's a specific item and you want to draw attention out to it, then we can add it. That's fine.
Can we draw out stained glass? Yeah, no.
It's a development standard and development requirement. But we could certainly add a category on the arts, maybe, and come up with some. I'll just add that. Community art.
Yeah, I think that the user-friendly guide to ADUs is a huge one for me too. That's just something that, you know, personally with friends, people ask those kinds of questions all the time. And, you know, I feel like that's the quickest and easiest way to maybe get some more housing in town that's available for long-term use in a lot of areas. There's tons of lots that qualify.
And we have approved a lot of them.
Yeah. But it'd be nice if it was more widely known and you had something you could sort of disseminate to the public a little easier.
Yeah, the code is actually pretty clear if you read the code, but people don't read the code. So we've come to the conclusion that, I mean, that section is actually kind of understandable. But yes, we need to provide something that's much more property owner friendly.
All right.
One last thing.
My internet is getting worse and worse. I'm gonna, if it's okay with everyone, can we close it for the night?
Okay. Ruben, did you have anything else?
Yeah, one last thing. And I think I saw it on a different sheet and it was talking about communication to the public. Was that on this list?
Yeah.
Oh, this is that's on there because I was just thinking about how well does our like there was something that I saw at the market and it was just a sheet asking for review. But how well does information like surveys get out to the public besides like Facebook? Because that's really where I ever see it.
Okay. Yeah, we do those through our we have a public information officer who is Lisa Church. She works with the radio stations and with the newspapers and all that kind of stuff to get that information out. But certainly we can do a better job. So we could add something.
Okay. Everyone, I heard half of what Ruben just said.
Okay.
All it.
So what I'll do tomorrow is I will send this out and I'll send all the documents out to the people that weren't here and also ask them to watch this and explain
Great.
to them what we're looking for.
Thank you all for sticking with us despite at least my technological difficulties this evening. Okay, we will adjourn this meeting at 7:42 p.m.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Summer, as well, if you're still there.
Thanks, Summer. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Stay healthy.